Uncorrupt here, checking out a new Maw and Disorder deck, Rat Hunter. We're going to keep the Spirit Poacher and the Wild Spirits. We want to be proactive, we want to try to get out onto the board, and once we can get a Shade Hound in hand, we want to be able to infuse it with the 3 beasts. It's kind of going to act almost like an Arbor up for Druid. We'll be able to buff our minions on the board. Unfortunately, deck tracker not updated at the time I'm making this video. This deck is absolutely hot off the presses. And against Enraged Warrior here, I think we just want to try to go ahead and get on the board with the Frenzied Fangs. Likely one of these is just going to die to the location, but then their location is on cooldown next turn. It might slow down or disrupt their game plan, and if they choose to save the location, then that's just going to be a positive for us. And we see that they are going to remove... Oh, and they actually play a second location, so both locations on the board, but both on cooldown. That's going to be good for us. We just get the Spirit Poacher down. Likely we're going to Wild Spirits next turn. And our opponent's probably looking to play, I don't know, maybe the Imbued Axe Weapon, maybe a Anima Slam. That's pretty interesting. Choosing to remove the 2/2. The 2/2 really a small threat, and not able to draw off the Slam. That's definitely a little bit interesting. So we're just going to go ahead and get the Wild Spirits down here. I'm assuming that this is Enraged Warrior, but with it being early in the Maw and Disorder mini set, I guess we could be up against really just about anything. So we're going to have to try to keep an open mind here and just let our opponent show us what they're playing. We see a shield block here, and they're removing our minion, which makes me think now that we might actually be playing against some form of Control Warrior. Maybe Control Warrior looking to make a comeback. And we're just going to get down the Rodent Nest. We're going to play on curve, spend all of our mana. Of course, once the Rodent Nest spawns the 5 rats that are inside, then it's going to give our Defias Blast Fisher a whole lot of damage here. We actually top deck a second Blast Fisher. I think if we just go ahead and play a Blast Fisher, we'll go ahead and take the 6 damage face. All damage is going to go face, of course, because there's no minions on the board. And then we're just going to swing. The Rodent Nest here is actually good AoE protection. If our opponent is able to sweep the board, it's still going to summon the 1/1 rats that are going to be on the board, which is good news for us. And then we could potentially rats of an extraordinary size next turn to get some 1-mana 5/5s in hand. We're just going to have to see how much, if anything, our opponent's going to be able to clear here. Getting 3 or 4 5/5 1-mana rats in hand is really good. We know for sure that if this is Control Warrior, which it appears to be, they're going to be limited on how many times they can sweep the board. So they're likely running a couple of Brawls, likely running a couple of Shield Shatters, but Shield Shatter now only dealing 4 damage. It's not going to be enough to clear the 5/5, so the 5/5 rats should be pretty good. And our opponent with a good discover here, Man the Cannon, so that clears up a lot of the board. Hero card off the top, and that's certainly a pretty attractive option. I think we just go ahead and play the hero card here, get it in play. It's going to allow us to generate more beasts on the board, and then we can do some things with the traps here. Freezing Trap, that's going to put the Naga Teacher back in their hand for 8 mana. We're likely to never see that again. And I think we just take the snakes here. Again, it's just going to be more beasts on the board for the beast infuses, or infuse in general, based on the cards that we have in the deck. The new Shade Hound card, of course, is infuse 3, but it has to be 3 beasts specifically. So if they choose to attack here, their minion gets bounced, and we get 3 2/2s, which will be good. And we'll have to see if our opponent can actually clear this here. And they can't. So at this point, I think we really just give our opponent the business here with the second Blast Fisher. We hit the Huffer, so this is going to be 12 damage just off the Blast Fisher, and then we're going to send everything face here. Really try to pressure the life total of our opponent. It is Control Warrior. It's likely they're going to be able to gain more armor, which is effectively healing. But we're just going to present board after board, and at some point, our opponent's going to run out of removals, and we should be able to finish them off the following turn after that. And we can see here they do heal for 8 and provoke. So this is a pretty strong turn for our opponent. They're able to heal for 8, and they're able to remove most of the board. We do now have an infused Shade Hound, though, which is good news for us. Infuse just gives it rush though. We can't necessarily attack with it, so we are going to save it to try to buff a board. So we're going to get the Rats of Extraordinary Size down here. And then this is going to give us the 3 1-mana 5/5s. It's going to be really good. Again, just another board that our opponent's going to have to clear. And he's looking for answers in the form of a school teacher. And they hit a Frozen Buckler and a Shield Shatter. So that's another board gone. And we're just going to be looking to generate another board. Definitely want to hero power most likely every turn. And take a trade here to see what we get. Probably should have traded first. You always want to draw first if you're going to be drawing. I don't think I want to play the last 1-mana 5/5. This is enough pressure on the board to threaten our opponents. We just want to try to bait out more removals. We don't want to play too much out onto the board and, you know, allow our opponent to, you know, really just farm us for free here. We do see they have a Brawl, but this is part of the beauty of the Wild Seeds. The Wild Seed is going to remain on the board. And it looks like we get to keep our 4/4. Do we ever just Hydrolodon here? Get another Huffer. I kind of don't think so. We'll hold Hydrolodon, and we'll just get more Rats on the board and more Rats in hand. So once again, we just have another big board for our opponent. They're going to have to deal with it, or they're going to be taking, if not lethal damage, certainly close to lethal damage. And we're just going to try to run them out of removals. This deck just has so many boards that you can create over and over again. We should be able to run them out of removals. We see Denathrius coming down, not infused all that much. And I think we're just going to use Sylvanas to remove it here. No reason to let our opponent just heal a lot with the Denathrius. So we're going to get Denathrius out of here. Denathrius bowing down to Sylvanas in this situation, which is good. And we'll hero power an additional Huffer, and we're just going to go ahead and get a couple of 5/5s out. So our opponent only has 4 cards in hand here, and it's, you know, starting to look like they're going to be out of removals, and it looks like they actually are. So pretty solid game for us there. You can just see it's minions on top of minions with this deck. Back for another game here. It looks like we're going to be up against Paladin this time. We definitely want to keep Peasant, Frenzied Fangs. We're going to keep the Shadehound. I think this is just a premium hand. We're going to be able to have our infused Shadehound available on turn 5, most likely, which will be able to allow us to buff whatever board of beasts that we have at the time. We just want to go ahead and get the Peasant in play. Paladin has certainly been more popular since the mini set launched. And I think, I'm afraid we may be seeing more Paladins and more Warriors. These slow-moving control decks, you know, just really aren't my cup of tea, so we're going to try to punish them. And our opponent having a good time emoting us here. I think we just get the Peasant down. Potentially we can draw 3 cards every turn. Paladin probably has a hard time removing this. The only thing that they could have would be like a City Tax, I guess. Unfortunately, they get the City Tax off the top. We're going to get the Frenzied Fangs down, I think, here. Or we could Selective Breeder. We're going to go ahead and get the Breeder down. And take, I think, another Shadehound. We don't really need Hydrolodon, but infused Shadehounds should be really good in this matchup. And Rat King tends to farm Paladin just kind of in general here, so things appear to be looking pretty good. So pretty much what I'm expecting out of this Paladin deck is it's probably going to top out at Cariel. It's probably playing the new card. And actually, there it is now, Open Court. And so we know that the card they've just drawn is actually going to be Cariel. So we're going to be expecting that with the coin on turn 7, or certainly by turn 8. We'll go ahead and take that trade, and we'll get down the infused Frenzied Bats here. And then on turn 5, we've got Rat King. Turn 6, most likely hero card, but depending on the board state, we could consider a Shadehound if we have it infused. I don't think we want to play the uninfused version here. Potentially you could, if it was the best possible play, you could tempo out just the 5-mana 6/5. They're probably blocking a minion here. I would assume they know that we're not a spell-heavy deck, so we're going to have to make these trades. And we just dropped the Rat King. Again, Rat King just tends to kind of farm Paladin, and especially in this deck, Rat King ends up being really good because we have so many tokens to be able to revive our Rat King. 5 minions is almost nothing for this deck. Righteous Defense. And I think we want to play the 1/6 here. We want to go wide on the board with beasts to be able to buff them with an infused Shadehound. So we're going to go ahead and get that down. And once our opponent plays something that we can get the Frenzy effect with, we're going to have a really wide board of beasts. And then those have Rush as well, so we'll be able to trade those in. We'll be able to infuse our Shadehound. And then we should really start to be able to do some damage very quickly against our Paladin opponent. Again, we're keeping in mind, we're almost totally confident they're going to have Cariel. With the coin, they could do that next turn, on turn 7. Worst case scenario for them would probably be to play it on turn 8, depending on if they needed to save their coin or didn't think they had a good Cariel turn. So we want to try to make Cariel as awkward as possible. Unfortunately, the big 9/9 comes down. We're not going to be able to activate the Frenzy. So I think we just play the hero card here. Go ahead and get the hero in play. And I think the Freezing Trap, we're just going to bounce his minion back. It still costs 5. And Motion Denied is a lot of damage, but Paladin probably rarely plays 3 cards in a turn. I really like taking Snakes with this deck. It keeps the board wide with Beasts. It helps with Beast Infuses. Improved Ice Trap, probably not going to be all that useful in this matchup, so we're just going to take the Snakes here. And with the Freezing Trap up, we're going to pass turn back. If we have to, we can use the Shadehound. Again, once it's infused, it is going to have Rush. It's also 6 attack. So worst case scenario, we can remove the 9/9 if our opponent chooses not to attack here. And we see actually choosing to play the Leviathan over Cariel, I'm assuming because they didn't want to activate the Frenzy on our 1/6. So Leviathan goes back to our opponent's hand. It is now an 11 mana minion. We'll never see that again. And we're also getting our 2/2s here, so this is pretty good. We're going to be able to play an infused Shadehound, and then we're going to be able to buff a pretty wide board here. So we do still have to... We're going to have to make one trade to be able to infuse the Shadehound. So we're going to hit with a 2/2, because the Shadehound is going to have 6 attack. So we bump there. And we're going to play an infused Shadehound. And, oh, we actually have 3 infused Shadehounds, so that's pretty good. Good news for us. Also with a Rats of Extraordinary Size in hand, that's going to be really good for us. We're still expecting Cariel, I think, to come down next turn. Just going to go ahead and take the trade here. And I think I want to get down a buff with the Doggy Biscuit versus using the hero power. If I was going to hero power, I certainly would have wanted to hero power first before attacking with the Shadehound, so that hero power minion would get buffed. But I think I'm just going to send everything face here. I like buffing the Snake here, I think. Still expecting our opponent to play Cariel. At this point, they're taking a lot of damage, so they might have to play it almost as like a defensive play. With the Cariel weapon, of course, they will be taking only half damage. Outside of that, they would probably, let's see, one Righteous Defense used. I guess some type of equality play to possibly clear the board here. Again, if they do that, we can really just throw down the Rats of Extraordinary Size. We see that it is the Cariel. And they'll be able to remove 2 minions here, but still taking quite a bit of damage. So if they swing into the 4/2, that's 2 damage. That would put them to 18. We would still have the 6/5. That would be 3. So effectively, they would be at 15. And next turn, I think we're probably just looking at just hero power and Rats of Extraordinary Size. We're going to try to stay wide on the board, again, just like the last matchup against the Warrior. We're going to stay wide, even if it's tokens. We could potentially buff those tokens with the infused Shadehound. We have 2 of those in hand, so we're still in a pretty good spot here. Our opponent trying to figure out exactly how they want to make these trades. And unfortunately, it looks like our opponent either DC'd or maybe they rage quit here. So I'm going to hero power, and we're just going to go ahead and buff the minions that we have on the board with a Shade Hound here. And get the baddie guest in play, and then we're going to send everything face. So, not really sure exactly what happened to our opponent, but we were in a really dominant position this game anyway, and fully expecting to be able to win the game, even though they skipped a turn. Just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with the end of this game here. I do believe our opponent most likely rage quit. This deck is feeling pretty good in the early days, and you can see the opponent left. Rat Hunter looking pretty good. Thank you for watching, and good luck out on the ladder.